This is Phantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Vault Dwellers? This is Steven, your host with Phantology Podcast. I have my lifelong friends, Ryan and Jake here, and we're talking about the Fallout TV show, I guess season one of the Fallout TV show, because I think it was renewed for season two, and just came out 2 weeks ago, I guess at time of recording.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit sooner on this one than we typically are. So hopefully you've seen the show by now, and we're going to do kind of a full spoiler dive into our thoughts.
This
Let's do
show
it.
I wasn't really like looking forward to it. Not that I didn't want it to come out, but I was it just wasn't on my radar really. So I was very pleasantly surprised by this.
Is
I'd
that
say the same.
because is it like not a huge property? So I haven't played the games. Jake, I don't think you have either, but Ryan
Mm-mm.
has. I've heard of the series, the video game series, but it's not like a huge thing. Is that why it wasn't on your radar as much?
Well, I think it's a pretty big deal in the video game world. It's just there hasn't been a really big Fallout game that was released since like I don't know, maybe 2014 or 2015.
Oh, okay.
And that was Fallout 4. They've released Fallout 76 in like the late 2000 teens, but it's kind of like a different genre of video game than a typical Bethesda open world RPG. So it didn't get the same kind of traction. And in fact, the release was pretty fraught with bugs and gameplay
Mm.
issues, and people didn't really like it that much, at least when it came out. I don't know the state of the game now. But I guess I've played Fallout 3. That's pretty much the extent of my um gaming experience, but I really liked it back in the day when I played a lot more Bethesda open world RPGs back in the golden days of Bethesda open world RPGs. And so it was a really fun game. And then I went to college right before Fallout New Vegas came out, but I've heard lots of people love that one too. So yeah, I'll kind of lend my thoughts as a video game player.
So are these, from what I heard, the story of the TV show is not a story that they adapted from any of the games, but it's a story that like fits into the game lore.
It's like, from what I heard, it's the furthest story in the game storyline so far.
What do you mean it's the furthest?
Like it takes place after the latest game, Fallout 4.
Oh, okay. I don't know exactly about the timeline of each game, but um I do know that Steven is right. It doesn't cover any of the video game stories, but it is
Or
canon.
characters, right?
Yeah, or characters. I think there might be some characters like in well, are we doing a spoiler free review at the beginning, or are we just jumping in?
But okay, we'll do a spoiler free
Okay.
review. We usually do that. People probably expect that.
Yeah.
So
So
maybe,
there
yeah, opinions on the show first, after we wrap up this.
so there are a few minor characters that
Okay.
are from the games, and they might be taking a larger role later on. But it's interesting because each Fallout video game takes place in kind of a different area geographically within the US. Like there's Las
Mm.
Vegas, there's Washington, D.C. I'm not sure about the other areas. But this is like Los Angeles. So it's kind of cool how, you know, they explore different areas and the different factions that have developed within them.
So it's different than like The Last of Us, which adapted a lot of, from what I've heard,
Yeah.
also haven't played that game, but I heard it adapted a lot of scenes, pretty much one for one. Story was very much accurate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in some ways, it's a little less risky to say we're just gonna make a new story because it's not something that is super like people are not like beholden to adapting the story exactly how they loved it in the video game. So you can kind of do whatever as long as you get the
Yeah.
world and the feel of the story of
Right.
the franchise correct.
Right.
Also, as someone who hasn't played either series of video games, from what I understand, like they're very different genres of games. Like the Last of Us series is like a cinematic video game
Mm-hmm.
experience. It's not really an RPG where you're making
Yeah.
decisions to influence like what happens in the story. Whereas
Mm.
if I'm right here, Ryan, that's what Fallout, like it's that open world RPG where, what happens in the story is dependent on like the decisions you make. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just kind of a recipe for disaster for an
Yeah.
adaptation in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Um, since you don't have these, well, maybe you do. It doesn't seem like you would have a very well-defined protagonist character in most RPGs, whereas in like The Last of Us, those types of games, you do like they've been like their backstory and their story is written for you. But
Right. I think that The Last of Us is very much driven by the story and the characters, whereas Fallout is driven by the gameplay and the world. Um,
Mm.
and so I think that the protagonist of Fallout is, meant to be somebody who you can create and put yourself into, um, rather than, a story-driven game like The Last of Us.
so I
So,
think it's, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, so very, very different types of video games and very different ways of adapting them. But I think that's a good point in that each adaptation kind of suits the initial source material.
Yeah, and I think they did the smart decision there and were able to create some really good characters. Like I thought the main three characters you follow were done very well and you kind of get a like glimpse into the different factions and it sounds like the factions are a big part of the Fallout world. And I feel like the characters they made for the show really get to showcase that and each character you follow is giving you kind of a different perspective on the world. You have Lucy, who she's probably closest to us as the audience, I'd say, in terms of like
Hmm.
she's experienced the world pretty new in the same way we are. But then you have Maximus, who's kind of the foil to her. Everything that is new to her is commonplace for him, and everything that's commonplace for her is new to him. And then you have um, the ghoul who just has
Cooper. Yeah.
without spoilers, just has a really good perspective and
Yeah.
yeah.
Good, let's kind of ride that into review. So, Jake, like the characters, what do you guys think as far as an overall rating for the show? Who would
Yeah.
like it? What type of, yeah, what was your experience?
So I kind of to preface it, I was similar to Ryan, having not played the games. I knew they were making an adaptation, but I was not like I kind of viewed it like um and don't come at me, but kind of like the Wheel of Time. Like I thought it'd be on par with that
Ooh.
quality of adaptation where I was like, man, Fallout fans are probably going to be disappointed in this, and it's probably not going to be that good of a TV show. But I was in a long car ride, and I was like, it had been a couple days since it was out, and I was like, oh yeah, I should check out the first episode. And like seriously, from then on, I could not put it down. Like any chance I had, I was watching another bit of the show. So yeah, I think it's like a dark comedy drama in this post-apocalyptic world. So if you're into like dark humor, I think you'd like it. If you're into retrofuturism, I think you'd like it. It's got this level of intentional campiness to it due to like the retrofuturism that my dad has been watching it and something he was like, it's a little too cheesy. And I'm like, that's like intentional. That's like part of Like you'll have this like 50s style cheesy thing happen and then something super dark, like that just juxtaposition. If you're into that, you'd really like the show. And if you're just into good characters.
Retrofuturism is a new word for me, Jake.
I've been listening to a lot of deep dives into the creation of the Fallout series from like the
Okay.
video game developers. And that's probably where I learned that word because they wanted it to be what people from the 50s imagined the future would be.
Yeah,
That's kind of the idea there.
which
mean,
makes it feel
Fallout,
like really realistic show. Yeah, I mean that's where the story starts, and it makes sense to give it their view of the future rather than 2024 view of the future.
Yeah.
the series was pretty inspired by like post World War II America.
Yeah. And
So that's kind of, and yeah, but it takes place in the future. So, retro inspired futuristic game. But yeah, the term makes sense, but it was new to me with the show. That's where I heard people start referring to it. But
yeah.
it's funny because Jake's experience with the show is pretty similar to mine. We traveled to New York last weekend, and so we had like a 3 hour flight, and I was like, oh, this show just came out. I'll download a few episodes. And so I watched a few on the plane over, and I was sold every night. We'd
Yeah.
have a long day, like walking around, taking subways, doing all the different things you do in New York. But every night after my wife went to bed, I was up watching Fallout. And then I didn't finish it on the flight home, but I had like one more episode, and so I finished it like the day after I got back.
Nice. It
So
was hard to put down.
yeah, it was great. I think I overall really liked the characters and the story, and it was, similarly a good, like a similar quality level to me as The Last of Us. It
Yeah.
totally different tone, but I would probably give that first season a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd
Mm.
agree. Yeah, 9 out of 10, I think is where I'm at.
I liked the show. I think both of you guys are higher than I was. I like The Last of Us more. I Things I liked about Fallout, I liked the dark humor style. That's that was the thing when I heard that it was kind of this like zany, strange, futuristic show. That sold me. I like shows that are like that. I feel like I've seen enough shows that are just, more straightforward or more just grim apocalyptical stuff where I don't need to see any more stuff like that. But anything that's like weird and off the wall and funny, I'm usually there for that. I liked the build up of the mystery of it all. I do think that it starts slow for sure, and it doesn't seem super connected. So you have to trust that it's going to go somewhere as you start through the first few episodes, which was fine for me. But you do have to like be sure you're going to invest in getting all the way through
Hmm.
in order to pay off. If people bounce off it after 3 or 4 episodes, they're probably going to be kind of not satisfied in the show because it doesn't really answer too much until you get closer to the end. But that's not really a criticism on my end because I was intrigued the whole time and I felt like we were doling out, small hints here and there as we go along. I agree with you, Jake, that I think the characters were really well done. I think the only reason why I didn't like it quite as much is I felt like maybe it was too slow at times, and in the middle section there were some episodes, maybe not entire episodes, but there were some like bits of action that kind of seemed like filler, like they didn't really advance things a ton. They were interesting and fun, but at the same time, like we could have had the same story without that. So
Hmm.
I,
Okay.
I felt like the story they told in 8 episodes maybe could have been told in like 6 episodes.
Steven, didn't
Yeah.
you hear the ghoul's quote in the beginning where he
Yeah.
says the first rule of the wasteland is you always get sidetracked by bull crap or something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, when she
Something
was like,
along.
haven't you heard of the golden rule? He's like, we have our own golden rule in the wasteland. You will
Yeah,
always be sidetracked.
which is
I
hilarious considering like in the games, in these open world RPGs, you're always doing other things rather than progressing the main
Oh yeah.
quest.
Yeah, anytime
yeah.
I play an RPG, a side quest is way more interesting than the main quest.
Yeah.
I agree. I do think it's not a very story driven show. It's much more of a character driven show. And for me, I enjoyed those slower moments because I feel like they doled out the mystery of the characters in a with good pacing, I'd say. So I was like engaged that whole time. But I do agree, like if you're trying to figure out like if you're more of the mindset of like, these characters haven't completed their objectives yet, it does like they do get like bogged down and things happen that sidetrack them from that. I think the main detriment I would say the show has is the budget, you know. Some of the effects, most of the effects look really good, but some of them you can tell it was just a budgetary like concern.
Mm.
Um,
And
and
they didn't have a ton. They reused the same few sets over and over again,
yeah,
right? And they're kind of yeah, they were kind of like bouncing around the same few places when it was this big adventure, and so it maybe seemed a little strange. So like, here we are again at the vaults. Yeah.
but I will say for like the budget constraint it had, I think it did spectacularly. Like it's funny to think that so uh is it Jonathan Nolan? Christopher Nolan's brother is the one who like executive produced the show and directed a few of the
Mm.
episodes. And so it's funny that like within the previous year, his Christopher Nolan comes out with Oppenheimer, which is about nuclear bomb and has like some of the best like effects, as you'd expect from such a huge budget movie. And then his brother does this like zany, also related to nuclear bomb story.
Yeah,
But
that is funny.
Wonder if Jonathan's the younger brother. He's trying to copy his older brother.
yeah, always living in a shadow.
Steven, so what would you give it out of 10?
I give it an 8 out of 10.
8. Okay.
I think The Last of Us was more of a 9 out of 10 for me, or maybe even
Okay.
higher. I really liked that show.
I
This one was
Yeah.
good. This one was good, but it wasn't good to the point where I was like glued to the TV, wanted to see every little bit of, if I was like looking away for a bit here and there because I get distracted because, I'm a person living in 2024. I felt like I wasn't like missing out on too much. But I will say by the last few episodes, I was getting more and more into it. So like I felt like it was a strong start, kind of went all over the place in the middle. Not in like a bad way, but in a way that just, I don't know, didn't quite work for me completely. And then by the end, it found itself again, and I was like really interested in what was happening.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. The Last of Us is a probably a more compelling TV show, and but it is hard to compare. They're so different. Like The Last of Us is like this intense drama with huge
Yeah.
like emotional moments. And while this like Fallout is not, I do think they nailed the emotional moments that were in the show. Like the actors and the writing was done super well in that regard. But you're trading some of that those great emotional moments for robots, like British voiced 50 styles robots and
Yeah.
Uh,
I
things
I
like
mean
that.
Fallout, I don't think Fallout really would have worked,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
those with like the same, level of emotion. I don't know. It probably could have worked with the right
But
director.
no spoilers, but like the last episode has some amazing emotional payoff
Yeah.
moments. Like super well done.
Hmm.
Yeah.
let's get into spoilers now. I feel like that's a decent
Let's
enough
do it.
review for those interested in the show. Sounds like we're all saying it's a recommend for us.
Yeah.
You guys are saying it's like a strong recommend. I'm saying it's
Yeah,
worth
right.
watching. If it checks, if you're interested in any of those categories of shows that we explained, I think it's definitely worth watching. Okay, so on we go into spoilers. Do you want to let's just open it up to like what were your favorite moments, and we can kind of bounce around from there.
Um, yeah, I love just Cooper's whole storyline.
I
Like,
was just gonna say that. I love the
yeah,
ghoul.
yeah, and like Lucy was the main character, obviously, of the season, but like I feel like Cooper's character was the character that was more connected to everything. Like he was
Mm,
like he was more a main character in terms of like foundational, whereas Lucy was just like the character you're following. Where I don't know how to really describe that difference
you were
well.
just, I think you had a good explanation earlier when you said the audience knows as much about the world as Lucy does. And so we're
Yeah,
discovering everything through her eyes and through her experiences. But the ghoul is the one who knows
everything.
everything. So
Yeah,
anytime he's on screen, and we get a sense of like, okay, this guy really knows. So we need to pay attention to what he's doing because there's going to be
yeah,
some hints as to what actually happened.
and
Yeah,
like,
and
yeah, go ahead.
well, he just I felt like he was a compelling character, and I loved the portion of his story that we saw, but there's still so much to him that we don't know.
Yeah,
Right.
Like there's this huge gap between the past and the present that has not really been explored much.
yeah, and and like aside from that, like I feel like there's so much character work happened between him and Lucy that like at the end of season one, you're not sure. You're like potentially Lucy has had a big impact on his moral compass, but you're not sure, and like
Really?
so
I didn't feel like she had a huge impact on his
Who do
moral
you
compass.
who do you think had a bigger impact, Lucy on him or him on Lucy?
Lucy on him for sure. I think he like I don't on moral compass, I don't think he messed with her moral compass at all. I think he educated her in just how like ruthless the world was around her, so she wasn't as naive. But I mean,
Mm.
at the end, she like
I don't know.
uh
At the end, she killed her mom,
she killed her mom to put her out of her misery. That was a pity kill. That
but
wasn't
I
a
don't think that Lucy at the beginning of the show would have been able to do that, even to put her out of her misery.
She's
I
been
think
hardened a lot
I think
from
she's been
episode 1 to episode 8.
maybe yeah, maybe hardened. But I think moral like her morality would have been the same. Like this is not like this is a creature that is just suffering, like and it needs like they need to be put to rest. Um, whereas
Hmm.
I do think like he would not okay, the ghoul, the moment, like the crucial moment that I think Lucy had an impact on him is when she escapes the organ harvester and leaves like a 2 or 3 month supply with him of the is it radiation medicine or is it specific to ghoul medicine? I don't know. Still trying to figure
Yeah,
that out.
they didn't
But
really. I don't know if it was anti-rads or what.
but she like leaves him with medication as he's dying, or as he's
Mhm.
dying slash turning into a feral ghoul. And then he like goes inside and like watches his old TV show. And I think a combination of Lucy's mercy and him viewing his own humanity, like to me, I read that scene as he's discovering his humanity again by watching that. And then
Okay.
what the decision he makes that makes me think he has changed is at the end, he asks her to join him in the hunt for her father. Not like he doesn't really need her for that. He's going to be able to track. He like made it so he could track her father, but he's inviting her on this journey, and I think that was like an indication that his morality had changed. I don't think it's like 100% sure, like a fact that it has, but I think to me that was an indicator that it had changed, rather than just like leaving her behind because he doesn't need her.
Okay.
He's the classic, stereotype of the rugged male character that's hardened to the world, but is,
It's an
we want to,
anti-hero.
yeah, we want to love him because we hope that at his core, he's got some goodness to him and it just needs to be brought out. I enjoy these
He's
types
very
of
similar
characters.
to Joel from The Last of Us.
Yeah, yeah, he is. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying his morality has changed to be like a truly good character, but I do think he's less cruel than he was before.
Yeah.
Mm.
But
And
What do
yeah.
it made me really, I'm like really looking forward to the second season, mainly because like I want to explore his story more. I want to know like how
Right.
he became the way he is, like what happened from the very first scene of the show where the bombs dropped and he gets his daughter on the horse and they're riding off to the point where he doesn't know where his daughter and his ex-wife are.
Yeah, they like dropped that bomb in the last episode, like, where's my family? And you're like,
Yeah.
wait, he doesn't know what happened to his daughter? How does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm I'm assuming they're still alive, and I'm assuming his wife is still like pretty high up with Vault Tech or like whoever is. I'm not. Do we know like what organization is
She's
currently running the show? Is it?
running the show like in the present day.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Like
don't know.
where is Hank going back to? Basically, I figure that Hank is going back to his wife, who was amongst a group of the same cronies who were running it in that flashback season
Yeah.
Wait,
scene where
what?
they say, in the scene where they reveal he's spying on her, and
Yeah.
it's revealed that they're like, oh, we could just drop these bombs and create this need for us and make all this money, right? I'm
So
assuming that
that
she's
There's a
still
few
part of
different
that.
factions.
Yeah, so
Okay.
she worked for Vault Tech, and that meeting had a bunch of different companies. I think like Rob Corp or something like that was one of them. And then I don't know. But then in
Yeah.
the present day, there's like that scientist group. I think they call it the Enclave or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm,
Um, but I don't know if I was trying to figure out if that was an evolution of like that secret meeting of companies, like if they evolved into the Enclave, where the doctor with the fusion reactor in his head
but
came
his
from.
wish, I mean, his last wish was to get this to Moldaver, right? Which seems like it
Right.
would be at odds with the, big executives.
Right, which is why the dad, Kyle MacLachlan, was against it, right? And but yeah, so I don't know if those are like, and if the Enclave is the present day version of that, or if they are a completely separate thing. And it
Mm,
sounds like, so we learned that the vault, like Vault Tech, sold out each vault. I think I'm not confusing this with video game lore, to kind of like do basically their own experiments on how to best preserve humanity.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
That's explained in the show.
That's what they said in
Um,
the show.
so some of the vaults could still be run by Vault Tech aside from, 33,
Mm.
or 32. I can't remember or 31. 31 was the one, I think.
31 was the one that they were getting
Leaders from.
the leaders from. 32
Yeah.
was the one that Ella or 33 was the one that Ella came from, or Lucy came from,
Yeah.
and 32 was the one that they were
They killed
recolonizing.
themselves. Yeah.
Did they
Um,
kill themselves? I thought they were killed.
I thought they said like I thought they killed themselves once they discovered that they were part of an experiment from 31. I thought that's what her brother and the other guy discovered because they talked to the prisoners, the surface guys, and the surface guys were like, you think we're bad, like people in 32 had already done horrible stuff before we got there. I thought, from what I
Mm.
understood, is Moldaver's people broke into 32 and it was already like everyone was dead based on how old the bodies were. And
Definitely
then
everyone was dead. I don't remember. It must have been explained, but I don't remember what it was. Was
My
it?
my understanding
Mm.
was that um they had, I guess, not killed themselves, but kind of like cannibalized each other. So I don't. It seemed like they had messed with the food supply or something along those lines, because they had been talking about like the blight hitting the crops. I don't know if that was just the Raiders, but I guess some
I
disaster struck.
yeah. Yeah, that happened too, but there was lots of like writing on the wall and like people saying like we know the truth or things like that in 32. But yeah, so I wonder if like Vault Tech itself is still around as an independent organization, and maybe they're headquartered in um
New
wherever
New
New
Vegas, I
Vegas.
guess,
Yeah.
where we assume that
I know.
Hank, that Paul Atreides is off to.
Yeah.
I know that the games. I don't think you like encounter any organized Vault Tech
Okay.
um Vault Tech, agency. It's parts of it probably have like influenced the Enclave or things like that, but
Yeah.
as far as I know, and my Fallout knowledge is far, far from complete. We haven't encountered anything like that.
I can't remember how we got down this rabbit hole. What were we? What did you have a
I was
question?
I was I was speculating that his wife was still a part of
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Vault-Tec or
because
whoever.
his
Yeah.
family disappearing. Yeah, my hypothesis right now is he takes his daughter on the horse, they're running away, and so at that party they call him a communist, his like the other dads there. And so I think he probably ratted her out and became a pariah because of it. And they probably were separated. And I'm assuming she intercepts him and the daughter on the horse, takes the daughter into a vault. And I think that's probably what happens. Um, and I don't know if I wonder if he willingly gives her up to the mom because he knows she'll be safer there, or if it's more of a struggle, but
Mm.
like more of a abduction.
Willingly giving her up would be a good story piece.
Yeah, like making a deal with the devil kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But also having her abducted would be a good like character motivation piece. Like he would have been searching for her for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But
So we've talked a little bit about how much we loved the Ghoul
so
slash
good.
Cooper.
What a good
Um,
actor, man.
yeah, phenomenal actor. I think one of the low points for me was Maximus's character. There
Yeah, I
was
can see
there was
that.
something about him that I didn't like that much. I don't know. His motivations were, I think, hard for me to understand at points. And
I could see that.
so I don't know, his actions just he was a little confusing for me.
He wasn't as confusing for me, but he was not as entertaining to watch. I read him as a character who wanted to be brave, wanted to be the brave person, but he wasn't. And so he like tried to set himself up in situations where he could be the brave hero, but then kept like failing at it because of his own insecurities and cravenness, I guess. And so his arc was trying to become better, and that's like Lucy's impact on him. But yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. Like he wasn't as interesting to watch until he was like with Lucy, because Lucy was entertaining to follow through any of
Yeah.
it, and a lot of it had to do with just the characters okie dokiness and like the fish out of water kind of story.
Yeah.
I
I'm
think the
I
interested
most
think
in
entertaining part of Maximus was Thaddeus.
that is
yeah,
yeah.
I love Thaddeus.
Yeah, it was so funny. Oh man.
I think with Max, I was a little confused because I thought his motivation was supposed to be some kind of revenge slash like sabotage mission against the Brotherhood because of his childhood and everything that happened at Shady Sands and that scene of his past that they kept on replaying. But like he didn't really do that.
No, I
Was that
think
confusing to you guys at all?
They
no.
saved him.
Yeah, they saved him.
Like the brother after the bombs dropped on Shady Sands, I think the Brotherhood came in and rescued him.
Okay, so I just didn't
From his
understand that then.
perspective, at least. That's
Yeah.
like, I think it was kind of dubious as to whether how much they were there to save people or not. But from
Mm,
his
They
like,
probably weren't there to save people. They're probably there to try and find pre-war technology.
right. But from his I think he mentions at one point, he's like, yeah, they took me in when no one else would. Like, and so I like his whole thing was trying to prove himself to like the Brotherhood. That's why he was like, yeah, they'd be mad at me for like letting you die, but if I bring back the target, like it doesn't matter. Like they're gonna like
Mhm.
love
okay.
me for that. Um,
So he's just a survivor.
yeah, I think he is just a survivor, but I think in his heart he wants to be better than that, and he just
Mm.
keeps failing at it rather than someone who's like using it as a facade.
And
But
so Lucy is there to kind of show to shine a light on the aspects of his personality of trying to be better and like what he could be, like the hero
yeah,
within almost.
yeah. But I do agree, like some of his scenes were like harder to watch, and I think it's because he's not like because he is kind of a wuss about things. But yeah, Thaddeus was great. I loved when Thaddeus drinks the healing thing, and the guy's he's like, man, this could have been like radiated water or something, and the guy's like, well, or what is he? I can't remember. He says something. He's like, you don't have to worry about radiation anymore, and I feel like like obviously the audience all knew what happened there, but Thaddeus was just like, huh?
When he
Like,
actually got healed, I was like really confused. I was like, is he
same.
just like hallucinating? Like,
Yeah.
because even the subtitles, like when that guy would talk, it said snake oil salesman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I had the subtitles on as well.
Yeah.
I
I
guess
thought the same thing.
we're both getting
Uh,
old, right?
oh, I always have the subtitles on.
Mhm.
Makes for such a better experience.
And then he gets
Um,
shot in the neck. He's like,
I
why am I not dead?
Yeah.
It's like,
love how like
I
all
don't
the
think you should pull it out. I'm not just gonna leave it in there.
I love how all the tension just disappeared. Like they're like about to maybe kill each other, and then he gets shot in the neck, and then Maximus is like, "Hey, like,
I
you're not bleeding. Like, why aren't you dead?" You know.
think you may be a ghoul.
And then and he just walks off. He's like, "Oh yeah," you know. He's like, "Where's Thaddeus going?" I'm excited to see where he goes in the next season.
Yeah, so I wonder like what it was that he drugged him with. It might be,
Yeah.
I mean, from the Fallout lore standpoint, there's something called like FEV, which is like something like evolutionary virus, and it's like something that they used to experiment on people to turn that to like try and like push them forward in evolution and make them resistant to radiation, but it just
Hmm.
like turns people into like super mutants and other scary things.
Oh,
Oh,
I
so
mean
So
maybe
that
he's not
sounds
actually
like
a
what
ghoul.
yeah, I don't think he, because ghouls I think are just like a prolonged exposure to high levels of radiation.
Yeah, they say basically anybody, if they live long enough, would become a ghoul.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, unless that guy distilled the essence of ghoul somehow. Yeah, I like
Mhm.
that idea that he's not actually a ghoul, but he's something else that we haven't seen in the show, but it is canon to the games already.
and what even is that guy? Like the snake oil salesman, like what is his deal?
I think he's just well, he's a scientist. Remember? He was doing the experiments on the chickens.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if he's connected to something else. I mean, he's got the essence of ghoul. Like that seems like
I think
kind
he's
of
I think he's just a character who like just a survivor as well, who's like
a
more uh like experiment minded, and I think he is like meant to be like this con character who's actually trying to like come up with new things as well, but maybe he
forward
is tied
thinker.
into a
It will
yes.
it will be interesting to see if because I honestly, until you asked that, I wasn't really, you know, I didn't even think about if he had like some greater story to him,
Yeah.
and maybe he does.
I just saw him as like the wacky RPG merchant, but maybe I'm overlooking him.
RPG merchant. Yeah, that's great. He's Beetle.
Yeah. Yeah, very similar. More snake oil version, but yeah.
I was thinking of like the cabbage, the guy who sells cabbages in Avatar.
Yeah. My cabbage. Yeah.
Mhm.
Isn't there a random merchant guy that's important in Elden Ring as well? That's kind of bizarro.
Well, it's like the same. That's like
The
a
just
race
the
of people.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. It's
There's
not
one guy
just
that's
one.
dressed like Santa though.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um we kind of I do you think that FEV virus thing was what they were doing in Vault 4? They didn't mention that. Or was that just a different thing doing something
Well,
similar?
when Ryan brought that up, it definitely made me think of the experiments that were going on in Vault
They just
4.
didn't
Yeah,
they didn't
like
mention a virus in the show,
it could
which
be. It's FEV is forced evolutionary virus.
mm,
And
that was the
I'm sure they used it in vaults. Like it says it was an artificial virus created by West Tech, which is one of those
yeah.
companies. So I'm
But
sure
the scientists there in the show were Vault Tech scientists, so maybe not. But maybe I guess it doesn't really matter. It's similar idea.
yeah.
Um, I do think that's kind of uh Chris Parnell, is that the actor's name? His the one-eyed guy, I think that kind of did not look the best when it came to the effects. And I couldn't tell if it was
Yeah.
the effects that looked bad or if that's just how bad someone would look if they had one regular sized
Right?
eye in the middle of their head.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he
So
was so funny in it
we need
though.
to see a good-looking Cyclops in order to determine
I need to see a real
how good that
Cyclops.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He just looked like he was squinting all the time, and I didn't know if that was because the eye was normal sized
Mm-hmm.
or if it was bad effects. Not bad effects, but you know what I mean. Um, yeah, that was really fun. Um, just like figuring out that their backstory, but also like the cult part with Moldaver.
Yeah.
How do you guys think that's gonna tie in the future? It was kind of left unexplained.
I don't
Yeah, I
know.
don't know.
I hadn't even tried to reconcile that. I mean, is Moldaver, has something happened to her in which she's able to survive, like, or she had a significantly lengthened lifespan, or was she able to like freeze herself and come back out of like cryo at different points?
I thought I thought that I questioned the same thing, and I just assumed she went
Hmm.
into cryo somehow. Um,
Like
but
she's been this legendary figure that's appeared at different points in the
well, I
she
think she's
she she is
only
the
a
dragon reborn in the past 200 years.
well, I think she's only in like the original, like in the 2077 time, and then also in like the Rise of Shady Sands. I feel like that those are the only times. So like she could have gone into cryo and then came out before Shady Sands was built
Hmm.
out and like the NCR became a thing. Um, but yeah, I don't know if that was because of cryo or if maybe she's just a very well medicated ghoul. Or I don't know. I don't know if ghouls can look normal or not. Um, and then with the whole cult thing, is that is that going to play out more, or was the only significance of that to show that she was like a beloved figure of the of Shady Sands, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe she liberated the vault because I mean
That's what it seems like.
the original inhabitants said they were like experimented on, but now
Hmm.
Yeah.
they're in control. So maybe she had some sort of role in the liberation.
But it was only the surface dwellers, like the people from Shady Sands, who participated in the cult stuff, really. Like
Yeah, I guess
the
that's true.
the overseer's like, oh, that's surface dweller stuff. I'm not really into it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I wonder, like, just because, like, I hope it wasn't just to build tension and like, oh, Moldaver is this like cult leader, because then she apparently dies, at the end. And
Yeah.
so I'm hoping there's something else more there. Like maybe she's kind of a Mistborn era one, the final Empire spoilers in 3, 2, 1, like pulling a Kelsier, or just like trying to make herself more legendary of a figure,
Mm.
you know.
Like a martyr type.
Yeah. Anyways.
Now that you bring up Shady Sands, I wonder how did Hank have the power to destroy Shady? Like the way it was explained was Lucy's mom went to Shady Sands, Hank got really mad, and then Shady Sands is destroyed. Like
Well, we know
obviously
that
some stuff
Vault-Tec,
happened. Like, but why would Vault Tech be just like we're gonna destroy this entirely? Because they see
He
it as a
they,
successful.
I think Vault-Tec wants like their own descendants to kind of inherit the world. And
Yeah.
Shady Sands is like survivors outside of the vaults who are kind of putting together a successful government and gaining traction. And
Hmm.
so Hank probably put an end to it that way. And we know that Vault-Tec has nukes because it's implied that they
Started
dropped
it.
the bombs themselves.
Right, right.
But I mean
Yeah,
Okay.
that
because
does kind of that does bring me to another plot hole, which is why would Vault-Tec drop the bombs? Because like their whole point was, making money, right? And they wanted to inspire like kind of fear and terror to sell vaults. So why would
yeah,
by dropping the bombs they would effectively like, neutralize.
I
Maybe they had
think
gotten already to a point where, you know, like they had reached critical mass where they had enough
I
power and influence they didn't need.
I think they had two goals there. One was to sell vaults to make money, and I think there was like some warmongering um in the 2077 timeline to keep tensions high, to make people convinced that buying a vault would be a good idea. And then also when they met with like the cabal of companies, it was like the idea was, we are going to start the war because in order to end war, we need to not have factions, essentially. And the only way to not have factions is to get rid of anyone who isn't us, outlive all the people who aren't us. And so that's why they nuked, started the wars, to basically get like wipe the world clean. And then once you're able like to live out there again, then they'd come out and like reestablish society as one people. And so I think the like nuking Shady Sands, I think a lot of it had to do with like personal emotions of Hank. But I think like the logical justification is, we can't have you having your own society because we need to be the only ones who have society again. And so it had to be
Mhm.
wiped clean.
Hmm.
And then like what's in it for the leaders is, my understanding is, they go into cryo sleep. And so then when it is ready to like populate the earth, all those leaders are out again and they're ruling, like they're the ruling class. So they're not missing out on the money by killing everyone or power, because then they come back in as like the leaders of everybody.
Yeah.
Classic board wipe strategy. Got it.
Classic, yeah. Plows or swords to plowshares, or whatever the magic card is for that. Annihilate. There's probably a ton.
All right.
Blasphemous Pact. That's the one I played last night that won me the game. But yeah,
Is
we had
this
a little
Magic the
magic.
Gathering?
Yeah, we had a little
Yeah.
magic night last night, and I took Steven had to go. I took over for him playing, and he had this spell slinging deck that let you copy spells. And I had one turn that lasted 15 minutes because I copied my first spell 3 times, which then let me draw some cards, and then it let me copy every subsequent spell twice, and I was able to cast 6 spells that turn. And every time I cast a spell, I got 2 life for the number of spell. I ended up gaining tons of life and like doing so much, and then I ended it all. I had like beefed up my guys enough that I could play this board wipe card that killed everyone but my guys, and then it was very applicable to today's episode. Yeah.
Yes. Nice.
And
But I
we've
guess-
come full circle.
I guess just to put a bow on my original thought, so but it sounds like somehow Hank has enough sway amongst Vault Tech or whatever is ruling at this point to say we're gonna do this. Or maybe they were like
Yeah.
already like considering it, and he comes in and he's emotionally,
Yeah.
Well, I see-
invested in it.
I see him and the overseer who was elected at the end. I can't remember her name. Maybe Amy. I don't know if I'm remembering
Betty,
right.
I
Betty.
think Betty.
Yeah, Betty. I think because they were like lower level employees, that they were released earlier to like continue the continue
the-
the experiment.
Yeah, prepare the way.
Prepare the way. And I don't know. I think they were probably just in charge at that time. At most, they consulted again, if you're watching on subtitles, brain on a Roomba or something is what they call the name of the brain. I think maybe they consulted it with, and I can't remember. Do we know who that's supposed to be? That's not Bud, is it?
It is.
I thought Bud would be in cryo sleep. That didn't make sense to me that was Bud.
No,
But maybe
Bud
it
is
is.
managing.
Okay, so maybe, yeah, so they probably just consulted Bud, and then like made that decision themselves. And I think it would be pretty easy to just be like, hey, society's starting again. We're not ready for it. Take them out. But
Could be. Yeah, at
Yeah.
that point they were calling the shots because they were the highest ranking that had been awakened.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any other final words on this? Let us know if you have a Cyclops that Jake can look at, and so he can determine what a good looking Cyclops is versus an ugly one.
Yeah, all in all, like I said, I think I'd give it 9 out of 10. Highly recommend to everyone.
The only caveat I have to my recommendation is that there's gratuitous violence in this. But I
Yes.
mean, even the violence I feel is inspired by the game, because in the game you have an aiming system called VATS, which essentially is like you can aim at like different body parts and it gives you like a percentage of like the shot being successful. So like you can like aim at somebody's head and it's like 10% chance, and then you could like miss, or you could totally hit their head and then kill them and it just like explodes their head. So
I
and
love
it
that
takes place in
explanation.
slow motion.
Um,
So
It's interesting that it was as gory, if not as gory as 3 Body Problem, right? Like, I feel like the violence was actually more tame on this than I was expecting. But there are some gruesome scenes, just not quite as many as I think you
Mhm.
expect compared to a series like 3 Body Problem.
Yeah, no,
Really?
you're right. Yeah.
okay.
Did you
I
finish
just finished
Three
Three
Body?
Body Problem, but I didn't think that it was as gory, but maybe
Judgment Day, episode 5.
I mean that was really gory. But that
And
I
then
can't think of anything other than that.
There's murders
Yeah.
going on.
That first episode with the
Yeah,
the
beating.
scientists that
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe it's just because it didn't have as Steven would say, a zany tone to it, that it felt more violent than Fallout did,
Okay.
because it was just some
Mm.
fun violence versus traumatizing
Right.
violence.
Yeah. Fallout seems the whole time it just kind of has this like fake feel to it, right? Like none of this is real because obviously everyone's acting so strangely.
Yeah.
Therefore, the violence is not like as offensive just because none of it, I don't know, it just doesn't seem as personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie. Yeah. Well, Jake, Ryan, thanks for joining. I think that was a fun episode. If you want to see more of Fantology, lately we've been covering some TV shows, but we do books as well. And we have a big catalog of stuff. We're almost at 300 total episodes, which will be exciting. I think we'll
Wow.
hit that. I think we'll hit that at the end of May. So we'll have to come up with a fun idea for
Yeah.
that milestone. If you want to chat with us, you can join our Discord. Links are in the episode description below. And until next time, see everyone later.
See ya.